All right, welcome back, fam. That's what they say, isn't it? I don't know. Welcome back, y'all. Welcome back, you guys. Thanks for tuning back in. For my two-stroke lovers, we've got another two-stroke project in the works for today. However, I wish I had a little bit of variety to offer you guys. Some longtime viewers of my channel might remember a time where basically all I did was rebuilds on YZ250Fs. This is starting to be the trend on RM125s. Now, I'm not searching out RM125s. However, I am searching for two strokes because I kind of want another 250 for myself. And then I'll ride it a few times and be like, no, I'll stick with my 450. However, I keep running across these RM125s, 96 to 2000, pretty much the same, couple little motor differences. Well, I should say couple major motor differences with a water pump and things like that. So backstory on this one here, really nice father and son. They purchased a bike not too long ago. They got to ride it a little bit. And what he was telling me was that he went to the pro shop or whatever, and they recommended a different type of 2-cycle oil. He mixed it a little bit lean, and now he says the piston is rattling is what he thinks it is. Having a lot of experience with these, big end bearing on the crankshaft is almost always the culprit. However, I looked the bike over, I said, yep, I'll take it. And I know nothing more about it than what I just told you. I have not started it. I have no idea what it sounds like. He recommended not starting it because of the way it sounds, but we're going to start it. So if you can stomach one more RM125 build, or maybe more in the future, I don't know, stick around. All right, so first things first, normally we do a walk around and then go ahead and get it started, but I'm super curious to see what's going on with this thing. It's not locked up. It does roll over. It feels like it rolls over fairly easily, but has compression. So we're going to throw the fuel on, snatch up on that choke knob, and give this thing a couple of man-sized kicks. See what happens. It actually looks like the fuel is on, which is a good thing. That means the carburetor's not leaking. And let's give her a few. Oh, yeah. Yes, that's a lower end bearing. No doubt about it. The repair is going to be about basically the same as it normally is. Well, y'all know what we need to do. Let's get this engine out. But before we do that, let me let you guys get in here and take a close look at this bike. And then I'll start tearing this thing apart. And then I'll get back with you when I got the engine up on the stand or the bench or somewhere other than in the frame. All right, so starting off, this bike's actually really clean. It looks like it's got brand spanking new tires on it. The fork seals, he made mention that they might be leaking, and they are a little, oh yes, the other side is definitely leaking a little bit, so we'll have to do some fork seals on this thing. The trend continues. Upper roller is missing. Oh, this chain is just slap wore out. Back tire is beautiful, brand new. A little bit of spooge there, so she's running a tick rich. Back brakes can survive another go around the track. There's definitely some wear and tear on this bike for sure, but it's pretty typical, I mean, for a 20-plus-year-old motorcycle. Now, some of the main differences between the 96 and 97 version RM125 as opposed to the 98, 99, and 2000 is in 96, 97, as you saw from our last project, our clutch arm was over here, and it actually pulls on the outer pressure plate to separate the clutches. Also, as you can see here, there's no water pump housing. And in 98, they decided to put the water pump inside the crankcases. So if for some reason your water pump has an issue, you have to separate the cases to repair it. Now, they did seat cover directly over the old seat cover with this seat cover, and I don't like it, but I don't think I'm going to do anything with it and change it. This top throttle support or cover is broken. Easy enough, we'll have to replace that. So overall, our RM125 is definitely a candidate for a rebuild. This bike's in really nice shape, and it's going to make somebody a great motocrosser when we get done with it. So already another familiar symptom, wrong bolt kit installed. We'll save this washer. Take a look at this air filter. So the air filter is super clean. However, it has no oil in it whatsoever. These filters have to be oiled to filter out the fine particulate. So we will, this one's in good shape. So normally I just replace them, but I may clean this one and re-oil it. Gotta love this. The old carriage bolt as an engine mount. All right, let's get this top end apart. Nothing wrong with the cylinder head. Just clean it up a little bit. Piston looks like it's pretty new. Cylinder doesn't look too bad. No scoring, no damage there. Obviously you can see the problem here. I'm moving this back and forth and it's turning the whole crankshaft. So that bottom end bearing is seized up. And it does have some up and down play for sure. Typical RM125. Oh, it's fighting me. I'm gonna have to replace these circlips. Now, of course, we're going to measure up the piston, the cylinder, the rings, and all that good stuff to make sure all this stuff is decent and going to be reusable. No counter shaft sleeve. Sweet. Built right, as they always are. Loaded this bad boy up with the super glue of the automotive world, RTV. Nice. These need to be cleaned real well. They are carbon fiber, and I don't see any issues with them, so that's good news. It saves a couple of bucks. Guess what we got here? We got ourselves a governor, and it has no bearing on it. We're very familiar with this, aren't we? All right, now we're ready to split these cases. Obviously, I'm missing a bolt down here, crankcase bolt. We double check to make sure I got all the bolts out. Sometimes these dowel pins in here will hold up, get snagged. You generally don't want to put a screwdriver between your cases because these are machine fit and we want to make sure we don't damage them. But up here in the front, if you're very gentle, right where the motor mount is, you can tap a screwdriver in. What we're essentially doing here is pushing the crankshaft through the bearing, which is a little bit of a tight fit on purpose. I'm going to get a set of main bearings. Those are junk. Weisco, it's already been rebuilt. We're going to go with a Pro X. Had good luck with them. Now, one thing you want to take a close look at is down inside of here, there is a bearing that's down inside there, and sometimes that comes apart. This one appears to be okay. I want to kind of give you an example going back to our other RM125 with that bearing, or the thrust bearing missing. But this thing bottomed out. You can see the enormous gap that's in there. That's a lot it has to make up before it even starts turning this. So without that there, you're really not going to get up onto your power band. I'm going to finish getting the rest of this apart and get these cases cleaned up real good. Of course, we're going to get new seals. I'm going to replace the main bearings. They're noisy as heck. And obviously, we're going to get a connecting rod, gasket set, and well, let me get that stuff ordered, and then we'll be back to get this engine back together. Oops. Main bearing set. Let's go ahead and get these in a freezer. Getting these in a freezer, when you freeze things, they shrink a little bit, and then we'll heat the case just a little bit and tap these bearings in. While it's not 100% necessary, I like to give my center case gasket a very light coat of RTV ultra black or ultra gray, just to take up any imperfections that might be in the case. Prevent leaks. Very important on a two-stroke. Using a hard rubber roller like this will smooth it out so you don't have any high spots of RTV, which could cause it to squish into the engine and potentially cause issues. You can see this will not push down. It's getting hung up on the bearing on the journal of the crankshaft, and that is by design. These are a snug fit, and the last thing you want to do is start banging on this because you're going to potentially damage your crankshaft. So you want to use a crankshaft puller tool, which will draw the crankshaft through the bearing without doing any damage to the case or the crankshaft. This bearing for the counter shaft also is a little bit snug, so as you tighten this up, you just tap around here. I'm going to go ahead and measure up this cylinder. Make sure this is still usable. Generally what we're going to be looking for is taper, which means the cylinder has a little bit of a taper to it, out of round, obviously, if it's egg-shaped or whatever, and just to see if we have any oversize issues. Now, right around 54 millimeter, I believe, is where we need to be with this. And it looks good. We're just definitely not oversized at all. And you get about the same amount of drag all the way around. I'm not feeling any out of round. We can clean the cylinder up, go ahead and put a light hone on it and get it ready for our piston and cylinder, piston rings, excuse me. Now, while our piston is actually in pretty good condition, I am going to replace this piston and just put a new one in there, fairly inexpensive. Now, one of my subscribers said that they had really good luck with the Nomura piston kits. I've not purposely put one of these in yet, so I'm not sure about the longevity or the quality of these. You guys, if you've used them before, go ahead and put down in the comments what your luck has been with these pistons. We're going to go ahead and put this one in, and you know, hopefully it lives up to the hype. Wrist pin, a sticker, the retaining clips or circlips, very, very nice. And we have our lone piston ring. Let me get this ring dropped in the cylinder here and get a measurement on end gap. Now, these rings will have markings on them normally, and normally those marks are going to go up. And we'll use our piston to square the rings up. What we want to do is get a measurement on that gap to make sure that it's not too tight. Let me see if they have any instructions in here as far as what they want for a gap. If not, we will go with the OEM specifications. All right, so it does give us a typical ring end gap. A single ring is going to be from 0.25 to 0.63 millimeter. It's a new ring, so I'm sure it won't be over 0.63, but let's go ahead and get a 0.25 and make sure that that goes through. And it absolutely does go through. So we're good to go just to install this thing. All right, we're now going to prep the cylinder for our new set of ring. Put a little 2-cycle oil in there, and we're going to use a dingle ball hone. It's a 320 grit, and we're going to keep a moderate RPM and move it in and out slowly to restore this cross hatching and break any glaze that's in this Nicosil. Now, if you got any taper, out of round, warps, damage to the Nicosil coating, this is not going to fix it. All this is doing is putting light scratches in the Nicosil coating so that it will retain oil and help the ring seat properly. You can see we put it, so this is like some light scratches in this Nicosil. I cannot catch a fingernail on it, so we're going to go with it and reuse it. And there's some light scoring up here, but again, can't catch a fingernail on it. We're going to be all right. Now this piston is very clearly labeled EX with an arrow pointing forward. That means it's going to point towards the exhaust. Also with these 2-cycle engines, they're generally going to have a pin that's going to hold the ring in place, unlike a 4-cycle engine. So these 2-cycle engines need to hold the rings in place because down inside of the cylinder there's all of these ports in there, and if the ring was to spin, it could potentially catch one of the ports, and then you obviously going to have a cracked ring or some kind of damage. So, and again, we're going to put this ring in with the mark facing up. Make sure our ring moves nice and freely. I'll generally get one of my clips in. It's a lot easier than wrestling with it over the open crankcase. And we'll just slide our piston through the pin, or just slide our pin through the bearing, I should say. Now we can get our other clip on. Always try to put a rag over your crankcase in case one of those clips go flying, and they do. We don't go down inside and spend a lot of time trying to fish that back out. When putting these clips in, always, you don't want to bend them too much, because if you deform them, they could potentially fall out while it's running, causing damage. And also make sure that they're completely snapped into that groove, so you don't have an issue with that as well. Before we go too far, we'll just go ahead and give us a little spin. Make sure there's nothing binding. Looks good. Get our 4 nuts back on and torque down. If your O-rings won't stay in, we're going to use a little trick with some dielectric grease that'll hold them in place. These cylinder head bolts on this particular model are 18 foot-pounds, and you're going to do them in a star pattern. The cylinder base bolts are also 18 foot-pounds, but you're probably not going to be able to get in there with a torque wrench, so just snug them down pretty good. All right, next things first, let's get this thing cleaned up, get all this silicone off of here, and get these reeds reinstalled. So unfortunately, the gasket kit that came with this engine, this gasket for the reed block, no good. I honestly don't feel like waiting for one, so we're just going to make one. We've got an old air filter cardboard, and we'll just put it on there. We're going to trace out our gasket, and we'll cut it out, and that'll be it. Now, generally the best thing to do would be to use like gasket material for this, because it's a little bit more resilient to oil and gasoline. There's definitely no problem with putting a light coating of RTV on your gasket. You just don't want the RTV to be the gasket. Even though it says gasket maker, it's not what it's designed to do. Now, before I stab this motor back in, I'm going to go ahead and replace this chain slider because it's AFU. So this does not look like the right one. Of course, it never is, but maybe it's just an updated design, aftermarket. You know how it is. Also have a new upper drive roller, as this one is missing. We get this carburetor off and go through it, make sure jetting is correct. me go ahead and replace this sprocket just as well. Anyway, they put this axle bolt incorrectly. It should be backwards. And you might be thinking, well, what's the difference? It's still holding the wheel just fine. The reason is this because this is where your stand goes. It should be on the other side. Your bike should lean to the left. Only reason for that is, and of course it's not recommended to kick a bike while it's on its side stand because they're not super strong. If you do need to kick it, you can't have the bike leaning in this direction with the kicker on the right side. It'd be very difficult to kick. Since we want to make it easier to get this wheel back on again, we're going to just go ahead and spread these pads a little bit. And this will make it easier to get the rotor out and back in again. Now I want to get this carburetor apart, make sure it's clean inside, and make sure we got the proper jetting in here. We don't have any more issues. And they're all going to be stripped out. Yeah, not bad at all. A 178 main and a 42 pilot. So our stock jetting on this is a 175 main and a 55 pilot, so they're way off on here. And Pro Circuit is recommending a 165 main and a 55 pilot, and we're going to move the clip on the needle to the third position from the fourth position. So let me go ahead and set that up to Pro Circuit's recommendations. This does have a Pro Circuit pipe on it. Well, there's a lot of conflicting information on these. I'm going to go by the service manual, which is saying a stock slow jet or pilot jet is going to be a 50. So I'm going to change that 55 out to a 50. And we'll fine tune from there. Now let's go ahead and check our float height. And manual is calling for 16 millimeter. Close enough. And you don't want to check it with this thing fully depressed. You want to check it where it's just touching the pin. So our float height is off just a little bit. We want to measure to the top of the float from the carb body. So we want to be like right about there. The way we're going to do that was just going to get in here and lightly bend this tab up. And that looks good. Now let me go ahead and check my needle position. And this is off. This is in the second position. It's supposed to be in the fourth position, so we're going to split the difference and put it in the third position. I drained the tank of what they had in there. I'm going to put some fresh non-ethanol in here with some Castor 927 mixed at 32:1. All right, come that time again, moment of truth. Let's give this thing 100,000 kicks and see if she'll fire off. A lot of compression. Alright, so we're definitely going to need to do a little bit of carburetor tuning. Obviously I got to blow out all this oil that I put in here to begin with for assembly and get this thing warmed up, and then we can do a little bit of tuning, do some pulls with it. It sounds really good. No noises, no strange noises anyway. I'm going to go ahead and finish up a couple other things that I have to do on the bike, and that's going to be doing the front forks and getting the rest of the plastics on. Alright, so after running it in the shop for a little bit, it felt way too fat on the bottom end and way too lean on the top end. So I went ahead and put a 45 pilot in, and I raised the main to a 175. So I'm actually going to take it out now and just take it for a quick ride and see what we're doing. Put that 178 jet back in. I think they had this thing right. For whatever reason, the jetting specs are so far off on this thing.
breaking up. We're going to put the clip back where it was. A little twingy up top, so definitely 178. Going to go back to the 178 main jet. I'll leave the pilot where it is, and I'm going to drop the needle back to lean out the midsection a little. Now.
Oh, as it turns out, for whatever reason, the jetting that they had in this thing was spot on. So that's the clip, second position from the top, 178 main, and a 42 pilot with 2 turns out on the pilot screw. This thing rips. We'll go ahead and chalk another one up for the books. This one's good. I'm going to get it cleaned up and take it out for a proper test ride. If any of y'all are interested in some Restorooster swag, I'll put a link down in the description to my store. I got some shirts and some hats up. Don't forget, if you need a service manual, use my link in the description. If they have no specials going on, use my code RestoroosterOHV to get 22% off. Sometimes they give better deals. Go ahead and use their code. If they'll give you 30% off, sometimes for Thanksgiving, Black Friday, whatever it might be. As long as you use my link, I get the credit for it, and I certainly appreciate it. I also appreciate anybody who hits that subscribe button. You know who you are. I got a lot of great followers. I appreciate all your comments. I appreciate all your likes, thumbs up, and shares. Please keep it up, and I'll keep this up. Until the next time, I don't know, I got to come up with some kind of cool catchphrase. But right now, just be safe, I guess. Thanks again for watching.